can I just say I hate how you say Mario? It's Mario, not Mario. British people love to say Mario. He's Mario, not Mario. So those comments are just from the last few weeks. Every time I release a new video, I get another group of comments telling me they hate how I say this word. And that's been going on for 3.5 years since I started this channel, by the way. People do not like how I say the word Mario. I put up a poll to see how many people say Mario versus Mario, and the consensus is very clear. I am in the minority here. So am I just totally wrong? Should I stop saying Mario? Well, I spoke to an expert linguist to find out the answer. Before I started researching this video, I thought that I said Mario correctly. I didn't have any issue with how Americans say it, but everyone in the UK says Mario. Even the adverts Nintendo make over here say it the way I say it.
Enjoy reliving that Mario magic on new Super Mario Bros. Wii.
But more than that, when I listen to how Mario in the games says his name, it sounds like Mario, the way I say it, right?
It's me, Mario!
But when I started asking people how they pronounce this word, I started seeing some strange comments. People were telling me they say Mario because Mario says Mario, or Mario says Mario. But those comments completely took me by surprise, because when I listen to voice clips like this,
it's me, Mario!
To me, it sounds like he's saying Mario, not Mario. But now people from America were telling me that they heard the opposite. In other words, it was obvious that this was a more complicated topic than I realized at first. And so, I decided to call on the help of a linguist who could help me understand what is really going on here. So, I reached out to Joen van Speek in search of answers.
Well, the most interesting part of it is why British people hear it as Mario and the American people hear it as Mario. And I think that it's because the Italian vowel is just in between the British A and the American A. As you can see here, the Italian vowel is green, and the English vowel is orange, and the American vowel is red. And what the Americans do is they keep the vowel length of the Italian vowel, because in Italian it's Mario with a long A. Mm-hmm. Whereas the British, they keep the vowel quality, the A, but they shorten the vowel because there's no long A in British English. You say cat and not cat or something. Mm-hmm. Well, in some way you're both right, but as English lacks the Italian A, it's just a question of what people think they hear, and when in one culture people start using one pronunciation, it may spread. And I think in the United States the R pronunciation has spread, and in the United Kingdom the A pronunciation has spread. I think that's how it went.
But what about the rest of the world? Well, Joen told me something really interesting, which is that the English language is one of only a few languages that have this problem. Looking at the pronunciation chart he put together, you can see that German, Dutch, Spanish and Portuguese all feature that same long ah sound that you find in the original Italian word. Not only that, but the ah you find in Japanese also closely matches the Italian sound. So almost every language in the world is able to match the word Mario's original Italian pronunciation pretty closely, or at least mirror that ah sound. English and French are two of only a few languages which instead use a slightly different sounding ah. And as Joen explained, the UK and the US both ended up with slightly different variations of that sound. In British English, we ended up with Mario, while American English ended up saying Mario.
English is very unique in that it doesn't have this clear A vowel. Mm-hmm. In the past century, British English didn't even have that clear Mario A sound.
Really?
It had more of a sound, Mario. So it's only recently that British English has acquired this vowel that's more like the Italian vowel. So yeah, it's a problem peculiar to English.
So then that begs another question. Which pronunciation, British or American, is more correct?
The British version keeps the vowel quantity, so it's a, whereas the American version keeps the vowel length. So they both have one part of the Italian pronunciation.
So in other words, it's hard to say whether either pronunciation is more correct or even more faithful to the Italian pronunciation of the word. It's just an interesting quirk of the way languages change and evolve over time that the UK and the US ended up with pretty distinct ways of saying this word. But then, how does Mario himself say it? After all, Mario is meant to be Italian, but his voice actor, Charles Martinet, is not. So how does Charles Martinet's pronunciation sound? Is it closer to the Italian or the American way of saying the word?
It's a me, Mario! Woohoo!
He sounds very Italian.
Does he?
Yeah. He keeps the O as a simple vowel, Mario, instead of Mario, or instead of the British pronunciation. He uses the Italian pronunciation, and he uses the A vowel, which is present in Italian, Dutch, German, Spanish, Portuguese, but unfortunately not in English.
And there we have it. That is my answer to all of the comments I've been receiving for years from American viewers of my videos. I do not say Mario correctly, or at least not faithfully to how it should be pronounced in Italian. But neither do most Americans. Chances are, if you're from the UK or the US, you are saying Mario slightly wrong. But rather than that being an issue that needs fixing, I think it's actually really cool. The fact that just by chance, our two countries happened to naturally evolve different ways of converting this Italian word into the English language really demonstrates on a small scale how languages change and grow on a wider level. Small regional changes and corruptions in language are how we ended up with all the different languages we have around today. It's how Latin evolved into Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Italian, and how early Germanic evolved into modern German, English, and Dutch. That's just how language works. And this one word, Mario, demonstrates that on a very small and interesting level. But please stop telling me that I'm saying Mario wrong in my videos, because chances are you just might be saying it wrong too. Thanks so much to Joen van Speyk for helping me with this video. I don't think I realised just how little I knew about this topic until I spoke to him. You can find him on Twitter at @yvanspeyk for some really interesting deep dives into where certain words got their origin. And thank you for watching this video. I know I learnt a lot making it, so hopefully you learnt something you didn't know before as well. And I will see you next week. Bye!